Hello, I'm Jim Quinlan, and this is the first Adobe Captivate e-learning lesson I had ever created. So I'm very happy to be presenting my project workflow and ideation. So this was basically my pet project. My company didn't have any online learning, and so Adobe Captivate came to my rescue. I watched a bunch of tutorials online from Paul Wilson's YouTube channel, and I have a video production background, so I was very familiar with the Hollywood style of production phases to help organize my workflow. And those phases are pre-production, production, and post-production. So in the pre-production phase, it all starts with the script. The script allows you to know your audience, define the main point that you want the learners to discover, and define your learning objectives and learning outcomes. So in the script, you'll notice it's set up in two columns. The left column is where you can put your audio, and the right column is where I put the visual elements and interactions. So you basically put it all in text before you begin production. So the script came out to 5 pages with 6 sections to equate to a 15-minute lesson. So in the script, I was able to identify the interactions within the script. And for the more elaborate interactions, I referred to Word documents for review. So here are some examples of those additional documents. This is the branching exercise where in blue we have the customer asking the question, and then in green is the correct response, and in red is the wrong response. And you can see how it branches out into different scenarios. We got the quiz, put it in Word, and then identified what we wanted to have in the lesson that would definitely be covered in the quiz. So we taught to the test. So once that was all done, we were ready for executive review. We knew our audience, we knew our learning objectives and outcomes, and we had our script and all our supporting documents. So luckily, our executives liked what they saw, and they made some minor modifications. So then we were ready to start the production phase. And so much time is saved in pre-production with that script because all the stakeholders basically approve the script. You know what resources, imagery, or voiceover talent that you want to use. In this case, we did decide to use voiceover talent. And your production is streamlined and your timelines can be more readily estimated for completion. So in the production phase, one of the first challenges was I really wanted a VR 360 interaction within a basement, but our company didn't own any 360 cameras. So luckily I found some in depositphotos.com, these royalty-free 360 images, but they all looked a little weird. This basement one was perfect. So I learned that you could go to Photoshop and basically select from the top 3D menu, spherical panorama, and then create a new panorama from that image. It then asks if you want to create a 3D workspace. You say yes. And then it becomes an image that would be more familiar to what you were expecting. Then you could go to another stock image, extract the part that you want, go into that 3D image, create a new layer, paste that in. And then what you want to do is right click on that layer you created and select merge down. And then it becomes part of that background spherical map element. Here is a quick little video of me doing that again. Here we have a stock image where I selected the water. Then I go to the image I want to paste it into, create a new layer, paste that in. Then I selected a blending mode of multiply so it looks kind of transparent. Then in Photoshop, use the 3D navigation tool to drag it where I wanted it to go. Then once I had it in place, right-clicked, select Merge Down, and then it became part of that 360 world. Thing is, save often, because once you merge down, you're committed. So when you're done with that, go to 3D and Spherical Panorama and select Export Panorama. Save it as a JPEG. Go to Adobe Captivate, click on a new slide, 360 slide as your selection. Click the plus sign, and now your Photoshop image is in Adobe Captivate. You can then go to the top menu, select Hotspots. I selected the question mark. These are basically buttons that you can put over your 360 image. Then select in Properties, Actions, and then what you want to happen on that click. The hotspot, I selected Display Image, and then click the folder and imported my image. You could also modify the hotspot. So here I wanted to change it to the color red. But be warned, I've learned that if you are not on that slide when you go to publish, sometimes you'll lose your customization of the hotspots. If you're on that slide and then go to publish, it seems to retain the color. For the drag and drop, I once again went to Paul Wilson's YouTube channel, found these great tutorials, and made some minor modifications. For the branching exercise, I first created all of the customer question slides with the buttons, then created the wrong answer and the correct answer, and then in the properties, named each of these slides accordingly. Then selected the buttons on each of those slides, went into Properties, Action, jumped to Slide, and then on number 4, used the pull-down menu to select the slide that I wanted folks to navigate to, and then selected Infinite Attempts. In that branching exercise, I originally selected Arthur, who could be found in the asset characters of Adobe Captivate. However, our executive team thought, well, he's a little too overdressed. Most of our customers are in jeans and a t-shirt. And so I went to yellingyak.com and found some other characters which we purchased. We purchased Sean. It worked out just right. So I wanted to customize the audio a little bit on the quiz results. So I went to Properties, Actions, Execute Advanced Actions. And then within that screen, name the action, number 1 there. Then number 2, I wanted a conditional action. If something happens, have an action happen, else have something else happen. So on number 3, I selected from the pull down these preset variables, one that kept track of the quiz score. Then in another pull down, selected is greater than, and then typed in 79 because you had to get 80% or higher to pass the test. Then in actions, selected from the pull down play audio, and then navigated to the audio that I wanted to play when they passed the test. Then else, number 5, click on that and repeat the process, play the audio of sorry, you failed. So then I was ready for the post-production phase and start publishing my lesson. And I was very happy to see that you could publish to Moodle because this was our first lesson. We weren't ready to invest into Adobe Captivate Prime quite yet. And so we decided to use the free version of Moodle for now. I also in the publishing wanted to get rid of that blank project startup screen and went to Paul Wilson's tutorials once again and found these 2 great tutorials to do that. So that concludes my presentation. Sorry it was quick and brief. If you have any questions or opportunities, please feel free to contact me at jimquinlan.com and I'll be glad to help you. Thank you very much.